Hello and welcome to my channel. I will be going through my May reading wrap up for the month of May. So it was actually, considering it was such a busy month for me, it was actually a relatively good reading month. I read 9 books. That was 6 physical books and 3 ebooks, and one of those ebooks was an art. So yeah, I think that's actually really good. I was thinking that it wouldn't be that great of a month for me, so to have read 9 books is actually quite impressive. And yes, I did pick a lot of books that were shorter, the physical books typically, but I still think that a lot of the books were a decent size overall. So yes, I will now go through them in the order that I read them as well. The first book that I read was Castle in the Air by Diana Wynne Jones. This is the second book in the Howl's Moving Castle series. So this one follows a boy called Abdullah, and he is a carpet merchant, and he manages to come across a magic carpet, and while he's sleeping, he then sleeps on top of the magic carpet to make sure that nobody steals it. And while he sleeps on the magic carpet, he ends up saying the word that's needed to activate it, and the magic carpet takes him to a princess who is locked in a castle, and she then gets taken by a djinn and needs to be rescued, and there is a genie. So it is very much inspired by Arabian Night. I gave this, when I read it, 4 stars, but I actually think on reflection this is closer to a 3.5 really. I thought it was okay. There was lots of descriptions of women and how fat certain women were and how that made them ugly, that I didn't particularly like. A lot of the characters weren't particularly likable. He meets the main character, the female main character, Flower in the Night, I think only once before, and then the second time he meets her, it's like, we're going to get married. And I get it's a children's book, but I just think that's really weird. So yeah, I'm thinking about it, but I'm going to leave it at the rating that I gave it for now, and I will think on it and decide whether that does get lowered to a 3.5. I definitely preferred Howl's Moving Castle, and I do have the final book, which I can't remember what it's called. Hold on. House of Many Ways. So I do have the House of Many Ways to read, so I will definitely pick that one up and finish off the series. I then read Vox by Christina Dalcher, and this is one that has been on my TBR for a very long time, and I'm very glad that I have finally managed to read this. So this is set in a dystopian society where women are only allowed to speak 100 words a day. They have to wear a bracelet that tracks the number of words they speak, and once they hit 100 words a day, they are no longer allowed to say any more, and if they do, they get an electric shock, and the electric shock increases with each word they say over. So if the more words they say over, the more intense the shock is. And overall I gave this a 3 star. I found the first half of this was really interesting, and I read it relatively quickly, but the second half kind of lost me a little bit. I thought that the ending wrapped up far too quickly for us as well. It was over in only a couple of pages, and I really wanted to understand more of how exactly they had taken down the government that had done this. It was just sort of told to a main character. Jean wasn't the nicest and the best character to follow either, and I understand she's being oppressed, but then she was also quite horrible about her husband, and then her husband actually was a semi-decent guy, but she didn't like that, and it all just, yeah, it just wasn't for me. That really, the ending, and as I said, the second half kind of just didn't do what I was hoping it would do, so I gave this 3 stars. I then read Three Queens by Geneva Lee, and this is the third book in the Filthy Rich Vampires series, and this one had the opposite effect. So the first half of this actually was kind of boring to me and I wasn't really paying any attention, and then the second half really intrigued me, and there were some twists and there were some plot points that really interested me. So these, because it's the third book in the series, it's difficult to say exactly what this one is about, but the first book in the series is about a woman named Thea, and she's a cellist, and she is working at a really fancy party at the place that she works as a cellist, and Julian is a vampire, and it's his family that have put on this party, or well, there's vampires upon the party, and Thea unfortunately stumbles upon a scene with a vampire feeding from a human, and Julian finds her. He does try to sort of like command her and like force her to forget, but he isn't able to do that, so instead he then has to protect her because she's now at risk, and it is a romance, so they do end up getting together. But the first half of this, I just found both of the characters were really childish, and they weren't communicating with each other properly, and they kept getting into moods with each other and just not talking, so, and just assuming, and then they weren't talking, and then it was just really petty things. But then the second half of this, the story really kicked off, and there was some reveals in this that I hadn't been expecting. Now there was, I think the main reveal was quite predictable, but it's still, I didn't mind that too much because I'm not sure if it was supposed to be, but I definitely guessed it. And there's only one book left in the series, so I will read that one because I did buy this whole series before I'd even read the first one. So I will read that just so that I can complete that series, but I'm not exactly sure what that book can do because I feel like this kind of had an ending, but maybe that book will be better. But yes, so I gave this 3 stars. It was just middle of the road. Then on my Kindle I read Two Twisted Crowns, and that's by Rachel Gillig, and this was a Kindle Unlimited book, so that is really good because I always like to read at least 1 or 2 Kindle Unlimited books a month, just because that I feel like justifies buying it. So Two Twisted Crowns is the second book in the Shepherd King duology. The first one is One Dark Window, and that the premise of that is there is a sickness that happens to children, and they get sick, and then they get some kind of magic, and it then eventually kills them. So to preempt that, the king just orders that any child that gets this illness, the sickness, is killed, is murdered. And there's also other magic, which are cards, and each card has a different description and does something different. So our main character, she has had the sickness and has now got a voice in her head that she calls the nightmare, and she's been hiding this pretty much her whole life, and she then ends up being ambushed by some men on the road, and she gets into this whole quest to try and complete the deck of cards, and that should hopefully be able to rid her of the nightmare in her mind. So the second book, Two Twisted Crowns, is concluding the story of that, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really, really good. I thought both romances in it were really interesting. I liked the dynamic between them. I thought that everything wrapped up really nicely, but not in a cheesy way. I think it felt realistic. There was a logical end to the story, and I just find Rachel Gillig's writing is so atmospheric. It's so moody and dark and gloomy, and I just really, really enjoy it, and I would love to have read more. I then read The Roommate Rule by Georgia Stone, And that was the arc that I read. So this is her second book. Her first one is A Friendship Fling. So this is about two people, Max and Dylan. And Max is sort of like a lifestyle vlogger, and he travels and creates content, and he is traveling to Wales to this sort of like resort. And Dylan has recently broken up with her boyfriend, and she's best friends with Max's sister. And so she ends up going on this trip with Max, who she's only met once before when she was drunk. She ends up going on this trip with Max to sort of get away from London for a little while, because she's had this breakup. She's been working really hard. She's also studying, and it's just giving her a break. And unfortunately, when they get there, the huts that they are staying in only have one bedroom. So they create some rules to try and avoid anything happening, and you can imagine what happens. So I love Georgia Stone's writing. A Collision of Stars is probably one of my favourite romance books, and I met her as well at Christmas time, and she's just amazing. The banter in her book is amazing. I find they're so funny, and yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I'm definitely going to be picking up a physical copy of this at some point, and I gave it 4 stars. I then had a book out of the library, and that was Scythe by Neal Shusterman, and this is about the world has evolved and people no longer die naturally. So the only way you can die is to be gleaned by a scythe, and Citra and Rowan are 2 people who are going to become apprentice scythes. And along the way, it's really obvious that there is corruption within the scythe. Not everything is as it seems, and they end up, even though they're both apprentice scythe under the same person, it's then determined that only one of them can win, and instead of the other being able to go back to their family and their normal life like it was originally agreed, the person who becomes the scythe, their first mission is to glean the other. So it's then a story of life or death between these 2. But as I said, there is corruption. There are things happening that shouldn't be happening in this world that is supposed to be so perfect and so amazing because people can't die. And it is a young adult book, and I will say, because there's lots of discussions of death and different things that happen, and even though it's not depicted in this way, there's a lot of things of people essentially killing themselves, but it's okay because they come back, and it's just a difficult read. So I would check there are triggers for this, just because it is quite a heavy, topic. But overall, I really enjoyed this, and I gave it 4 stars. And I have picked up the second book in the series already from the library, so I will be reading that very, very soon as well. I then read The Strawberry Patch Pancake House by Laurie Gilmore. This is the 4th book in the Dream Harbour series, and this is another one that I've had on my TBR for quite a while, because I bought this pretty much when it first came out with the sprayed edges from the work. And this is about a chef called Archer who finds out that he has a daughter that he didn't know about, and she is, I think she's about 5 years old, and unfortunately her mother passes away, and her grandmother is too old and too ill to look after her, so he has to travel back from France to Dream Harbour to look after his daughter and organise getting custody of her. Now, because of this, he has to find a job, and because it's a small town, the only place that is hiring is a diner. So he starts working at this diner, and he needs a nanny. More importantly, a live-in nanny, because he has to go to work so early. He needs somebody who's there to look after his daughter early in the morning, and it just makes more sense for someone to stay over. And he ends up hiring Iris, who isn't actually technically a nanny. She just does kind of lots of little jobs. She sometimes works in the bookstore. She does like I think it's like water aerobics for elderly people and things like that. And to get some extra cash and to save money on rent, she becomes a nanny for Archer and his daughter Olive. And it is just a cute romance story set in a small town. Now, I have read the others in this series, and the one before this was my least favourite, and then this was a close second. The single dad trope is not my favourite anyway, and then there is something else that happens in this that I can't actually say what it is because it's a spoiler, but it's one of my least favourite things that ever happens in romance books. So you might get an idea, but yeah, it's just not for me. So overall, I gave this 3 stars. I will still continue with the series. I do plan to read them. I've got the rest of them on my Kindle. I think it's just with these following different couples and all having different sort of tropes, some of them will be a hit and some of them will be a miss, because I really enjoyed Pumpkin Spice Cafe and the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore are my top 2 favourites. It's just the most recent 2 that I've read aren't, but I'm sure that, you know, the others may still be really great. It's just personal preference on what you like from a book. So yeah, 3 stars. I then read probably one of my most anticipated reads, and that was A Parade of Horribles by Matt Dinniman, which is the 8th book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, and I'm sure everybody knows about Dungeon Crawler Carl. It feels like everybody knows Dungeon Crawler Carl at this point, but it is about a man who has his ex-girlfriend's cat, who in the middle of the night she jumps out the window. He goes out to try and get her, and when he steps out, the whole world collapses. Everything on the surface of the planet is gone, and then the stairs start opening up. This ominous voice essentially says, "You're now part of the world dungeon. You have 2 options. You either go down and try and participate and will have to fight for survival, or you can attempt to survive on the surface of the planet, but it is winter. There's, as I said, everything's been completely flattened. There is nothing there, and he is not dressed appropriately because it's the middle of the night." So he grabs his ex-girlfriend's cat, Princess Donut, and he goes into the dungeon. And each book is a floor or 2, depending, and he has to fight through. Now, what I really like about these books is, firstly, it doesn't feel repetitive. Yes, each book has a flaw or multiple flaws, but no 2 are the same, and there's always some kind of theme or some kind of thing happening which makes them more interesting. So that keeps it fresh, because there's nothing worse than just he's going into the dungeon and he's fighting some monsters and then goes into the next level and he's just fighting some monsters. Like, yes, on the surface that is what's happening, but there's enough difference in it, and it just, as I said, it just gives variety. So it is very much game based. So it's a lit RPG. They'd have sort of level up, they have potions and inventory and things like that, and their display systems and maps and those kind of things. So yeah, it's really good, and it mixes humour, which is what I always like to call boy humour, because it's just a bit silly and just a bit goofy, with really serious things and really serious topics, and the characters have so much depth and growth, and you can really see throughout the series how everybody is growing and changing and adapting to the most horrific things that are happening in this dungeon. And I think it might actually be one of my favourites. So the first book is my favourite. I gave the first one 5 stars, and every other book I have given 4 stars, and that's probably the highest ranking I've ever done for a series, so it's really good. But I think this is like my second favourite. It was really good. It was really emotional. I'm actually now terrified and also desperate for the next book. It was really good, and that was again a Kindle Unlimited book, so I'm very lucky to have got that on Kindle Unlimited. It's one of the main reasons that I have it. But yes, I need the next book immediately. And then the last book that I read this month was While We're Apart by Ellie Dean. You know the drill. There's got to be an Ellie Dean. So this is the 8th book in the Cliffhaven series. So this is set in World War II, based around a lady called Peggy Riley and her family, who own Beachview boarding house. And because the war is on, she ends up taking lodgers into her boarding house because nobody's able to go on holiday, so they're not using it for the traditional purposes. And each book follows a different main character that ends up either in the boarding house or associated with the boarding house in some way. And this one is about a young girl called Mary, and her father was a vicar, and she is sort of courting a boy called Jack who's going off to war. And she asks her parents if she can go and see him off and say goodbye at the train station, and they say no. And her mum is quite horrible actually, and they say no, but she decides to sneak off anyway. And she sneaks off and she says goodbye, and as she's travelling back, she realises that they have been caught in an air raid and unfortunately her parents have died. So she's obviously grieving, and then there is her father's chest. Like, he's got this chest that he kept in the garage and he was quite secretive about it, and there is a big secret that is revealed from that, which then, because of that, she travels to Cliffhaven to try and understand what's happened, what the situation is. And yeah, I gave this 3 stars. I typically give these 3 stars. They are, for me, palette cleansers. I read one a month because I've got so many of them. If you've watched my channel at any point, if you've watched any of my other videos, pretty much you know the drill. So yes, they're enjoyable, they're easy for me to read, they're a little bit of a comfort read. They were given to me from my nan, and this one was a lot shorter, so I think it was just about 400 pages, and the last one that I read was 500 pages, so quite a bit longer. And this one was much easier to read, and I liked that there was some kind of mystery trying to figure that out. And the next one in the series actually follows on from this and follows Mary again, which is unusual for these books. They are typically one person per book. Like, you do see the side characters, so you do see the other characters that have lived in the boarding house are mentioned, like, oh, that person is having a baby, or do you remember when this happened? But to follow the main character again is quite unusual, so I'm quite intrigued to see where the next book will take me. So, not too bad of a roundup. I will say I'm not getting very many 5 stars this year. I think I've only given 1 5-star this year, and it was a manga, Delicious in Dungeon. I haven't given another 5-star this year, which is very strange for me, but I think I'm reading much more critically, and I'm really thinking about things and not just giving 5 stars as much as I used to, just for the sake of it. So to round it off, I gave 4 3-stars and 5 4-star. So yeah, not too bad, still positive. I think 4-star, I feel like personally for me 3-star is fine. It's not a negative. It's this is an enjoyable, but I probably will never pick this back up again. I liked it at the time, it was fine. Yeah, of course there's some things wrong with it. There are things I didn't particularly like. There were things that I did like, but it's not something I'd reread. I will just grab the physical books that I read. So this is my stack of physical books. I feel like there's a good selection of genres in here and good variety, and I said there's a couple like this one and this one that have been on my TBR for a while. Then obviously continuing series, and this one's continuing series is really good. Let me know if you have read any of these or any of the Kindle books that I mentioned, and yeah, please comment down below, like this video if you do like it, and subscribe. So yeah, thank you for watching.